my sound engineer.
I'm Lily Karas, and this is The Fearless Designer.
I really wanted to interview Bronwyn Mayer Henry, a lovely artist and author.
I am an experienced artist with a lot, like I've created and shared 500 paintings.
She always looks like she's having so much fun with her work. She's so cheerful and happy. It just exudes out of her. So I really wanted to talk to her about her creative practice.
I think it's an amazing time. It's so much fun and just sharing the joy.
The conversation was fabulous. I so enjoyed it and wish it could have gone on longer. Oops. And we have a small earthquake shaking the camera. And even now, sitting and editing it, there's nothing I could really cut out. All of it was excellent. Bronwyn, you make me want to paint. Of course, now the sun has shifted and it's directly behind me. Painting would be more fun with you. I need a little Bronwyn on my shoulder at all times. I am so proud of you for writing it. It's beautiful.
Ooh, noodles will be good.
Ooh, yes.
We have dessert. What now?
I can hear you.
I can hear you. Fabulous.
Way to go.
Good morning. All right, let me
from the video.
let me start recording. I know, because I'm trying to, pretend it hasn't taken me as long as it does.
Recording in progress.
Okay, there we go.
Can I press record on my phone?
Yeah, go for it. And let me check my shot. Whoops. Bronwyn, thank you for coming to talk with me this morning.
So fun. I love it. It's been great. Even thinking about it, it's given me a lot of thoughts, but also I feel aware of I am an experienced artist with a lot, I've created and shared 500 paintings more than. So I was trying to remember some earlier thoughts and feelings, versus where I am today.
I think sharing where you are today is exactly like the thing that would be helpful to people who are at different points. And, because it reflects your experience and where you have gotten to having all that behind you. So I would say don't worry about remembering back to how it was. Tell me about how it is now.
Okay. Around sharing art.
Yes, around sharing art.
Oh my goodness. So for me, I am so madly in love with the creative process that the outcome of art on canvas very much secondary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I experience myself as the first viewer of the art as it's arriving. I'm as shocked and delighted and amazed as anyone else. So I'm just oh my gosh, it looks so great. Whatever. I don't think of myself as the one creating it and then sharing it with the world. It's I am stepping into a creative process and then delighting in what emerges and sharing from that delight. But yeah, okay. On and on. I could do more.
When you're painting and you're trying to decide, is this finished? Does it feel finished? Do I feel ready to put this piece as this was the best I can do and done and out there? Can you talk me through how that process feels to you, the way that you work?
Oh, there's so many layers in that question.
I know. It's a hard one.
Yeah. So for me, I am committed to every color that I choose. Every brushstroke is from joy. It's from so much freedom. Moving in the world in relationship with people or in committees or in workplaces where you have to have consensus and agreement. Yeah. There's so much freedom in just creating on your own for the total joy of it. So I keep moving through a canvas, moving around. I'll tweak big or small things. I work in acrylics, so you can layer them and change your mind completely, which is exhilarating.
Mhm.
And I stop working when I don't want to touch anything, that I'm completely in love with each moment. You said something like, this is the best I can do or something. I don't really think like that in term, because I feel like more like this is the most joyful I can do. But I work to stop on the early side, like to let it be unplanned and imperfect. And if I have a whole different idea, I will explore it on a new canvas
Yeah.
rather than really reworking an existing canvas. I might step away from it. I mean, I like paintings to mature or ripen, I will look at them from a distance. For 7 years, I painted in my home. So I would have the works in progress around.
Mhm.
I'd be playing a game with the kids and I'm kind of looking at the painting out of the corner of my eye. And, towards the end, it's tiny little marks. So you might add just a brushstroke here or there. But it's really also I also stop when I'm ready to start the next one. I layer them. So I never finish a piece and then start another piece. I'm always have
Okay.
multiple pieces going on.
Yeah.
This was inspired by the idea of avoiding the blank canvas, or just like being empty and like, where do I begin?
I find that totally fascinating. I with no planning, instinctually do that too. It's in that I always have way too many canvases going at once. And I like a blank canvas. Like, that's fun. I love opening a new one and having a new one to start on. But I agree. I feel like I need a little distance from each piece of work, and that it's really funny if I ignore one for a little bit, because I think for me, because I hit a frustration point, like I'm not quite getting it right, so I'll jump to another one. And it's so funny when I jump back to that other one, it's like I don't know where I didn't know what to do with it next when I was working on it the last time, because this time when I come out and see it, it's with fresh eyes, and it's like, no, I need to do this. Like, and so that's really interesting that you do the same or a similar kind of thing where you have more than one thing going at a time.
I love that. As soon as, if it got anywhere near a feeling of frustration, I would definitely put it aside, because I want my art to be infused with joy.
Yes.
I don't want it to look like a struggle. So I would definitely put it aside. I agree with that. By the way, a lot of my work, it's inspired by nature, but
Yeah.
like, this is a lot of flowers, like super close up. So it ends up having an abstract quality, even though it's realistic. So part of what I do for checking when something is done is I let my kids sit with it as well. And I ask them, are you seeing anything in this? Because if you're seeing like a face or like a hockey stick, or I don't know, I have them kind of look for, sometimes I'll do that to check if I'm done. Like, do I need to tweak anything? And they'll be like, oh, there's a dragon over there. Like, once you see something, you can't unsee it. So
Yeah, that's so funny. And it's funny that you say that exact thing, because I did a painting for my kids' room, and I did it rainbowy and more colorful than I normally do, because I wanted them to have like primary colors and bright colors and have it be like what felt to me like really happy and very I don't know, like I wanted it to feel, I love the way that kids paint and the energy that kids paint. And so I was trying to bring those colors that I don't normally work in. And then so I had it. And I remember at some point, my older son was like, Mommy, when can we take the painting of scary gumdrops out of our bedroom? And I was like, oh my God, that's been scaring you? He's like, yeah, it looks like scary gumdrops. Like, so that's really funny that you mentioned that you have your kids look at it. And of course I took it down and I ended up painting it over parts of it, but it was really funny. That was not, I mean, I guess gumdrops was sort of a good feeling, but scary gumdrops.
oh, yeah.
I need a new battery, I need my ESC replaced, I need my surf
By the way, that's
replaced,
what you have.
and my surface transceiver
Oh, I also have one.
replaced, I need my remote replaced, I need new batteries, I need a new motor. I have
Well, I mean, one thing I wanted to share with you about
Yeah.
the creative process, and then interacting with other humans about
Yeah.
your creative process,
Exactly.
is So when I do creative workshops where so many people have blocks and barriers to stepping into creativity. And one thing I do to create a space for them to be creative is I actually make it a compliment-free zone. So,
Oh, interesting.
I mean, obviously we're not critiquing each other's work, but also not complimenting it, because few of us are skilled in giving or receiving compliments. You know, sometimes you give a compliment by putting yourself down, like, yours is so great, I could never do anything like
Right.
that. And oftentimes, you know, if we're in community in a setting with a lot of people, I noticed you complimented theirs, but did you compliment mine? And it's head trippy. So people have really given me the feedback that compliment-free zone has really helped them. So I feel like before I would even encourage someone to share art, I would really be encouraging them just to be with the joy of the creative process and maybe start with sharing it with a few close friends, and even telling people, I'm not looking for feedback or compliments or anything. I just want you to know I'm creating. And I will often comment on other people's work in that manner. I will comment on their creative process. Like, I love that you're showing up and doing that. I love that, you know, because it really doesn't matter how someone else responds to your art. It's how the creative process is forming and shaping you as you move in the world, is how I hold it. So
That's a really important, that's subtle, but that's a really important mind shift of not, are we saying when we put it out, is the artwork itself good, but recognizing the energy, emotion, effort, bit of spirit that goes into each piece that an artist is doing, and separating that from them as a person, and separating that from them as like the quality of their piece of artwork. That's you're saying it as though it's a little on top, but I think that's a really big, very key shift.
yeah, and I mean, the thing I have in mind as well is there are some artists that you would think of as highly skilled,
Mm-hmm.
who hate their work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's the point of that?
Well, and there's the flip side, right? We have lots of examples of incredibly talented, like, I mean, look at Van Gogh is a great example. I know not everybody likes Van Gogh, but the fact that he was never famous when he painted. He literally would trade paintings for food, and the restaurants didn't want them. I mean, all these different links. Like, he was never, his artwork was so far ahead of his own time that it was never accepted while he was alive. Like, does that detract from the work that he did? Like, no, honestly, it doesn't. It stinks that he didn't get maybe the feedback that it would be lovely to think that he somehow knows that people are having big three-dimensional projected of his sunflowers and different things, Starry Night and all of that. That would be neat to think that he felt that eventually it came around to that. But you're so right about those two things being separate.
Another thought I had was about sharing works in progress versus sharing your completed work.
Yeah.
Because sharing a work in progress can be really vulnerable. And oftentimes people will fall in love with a work in progress, and you'll be like, oh no, it's not done yet, or it doesn't even exist anymore, I've already moved on. So I feel like that's something to, I used to, initially I would share works in progress, like, you're taking photos as you're working, but until I got the piece to a place where I was, you know, feeling like it was done, then I would go back and share the works in progress, knowing
Where it ended.
where it traveled to.
Yeah.
It actually, just a couple months ago, I did my first mural in someone's home. It was in like their kitchen nook. And I had waited and waited. People had asked about murals, but I hadn't been ready. And I finally felt ready. And I think what was most vulnerable, besides creating art on the wall
At someone's house with them watching.
yeah, was them watching. That was the most vulnerable part. Was,
Isn't that funny?
you weren't choosing when to share your work in progress. They were in and out, and, you know, and I just said to myself, I am so glad I have hundreds of paintings under my belt before I'm doing this, because I can handle the comments, you know, like, I mean, they're friendly comments, but even a compliment can cause you to spin off somehow. So it took me a long time to get to that like live sharing of the process. So
I haven't had to paint in front of people, but in design, of course, like it gets built and installed in many, many stages over many weeks or months. And that is very common and so it happens basically in every project. So I have learned to preempt that happening and be like, all right, remember, we're pulling things together. So the paint color is not going to make sense within the context of all of your old furniture. So I want you to like remember that we went through the process and trust the process of how we selected it and that it went up and that we're selecting it off the new things and they just haven't arrived yet. So, and it's so funny that you mentioned that. That would feel like a lot of pressure to be to be painting as people
and
watch.
even you would paint differently if everything was supposed to look good on its first moment. You know what I mean? You would make really different decisions versus
Yeah.
if you were building to something.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear about how do you I found in trying to think about how to talk about uh, to do the risk as an artist to put your artwork out for the world. It came back to the things that I found like it came back to was the process and reason for creating it in the first place, and it was very funny that those were my solutions for dealing with it, and it wasn't actually really related to what happens once it goes out. What are your like you mentioned that you used to paint at home and now you don't. Where do you paint? What's your process for how you like to be set up for your being in a creative zone and place?
Yeah. So, well, during the pandemic, with the kids home all the time, a friend invited me to work in her basement space, which is where I am now. And I'm so grateful for it to have a space to kind of travel to it. And it's like the sacred space where you do your work. But for me, my creative process from the very beginning, I started with, well, how many years was it now? I have to do math. Give me a minute. It was 8.5 years ago. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And part of the treatment was being in isolation for 7 days, which at that time was unusual. Now we're more acquainted with isolation. But so it was a very like heartfelt, stress-filled time of my life. So my first large painting was filled with so much intention and hope and even my fears and worries and prayers. So I've carried that forward in my creative process. So every painting, under the painting, I write in chalk a prayer or intention. It could be something really simple. I think it was earlier this week or last week, I wrote on a piece, I'm so uncomfortable being alive, like just help. It's just so uncomfortable right now. And so it's very brief. And other times if I'm doing a commission and a collector's given me more of what's happening in their life, I will really write a lot of sentences. But so then I go over that with an underpainting, might be a solid color. I play with all different versions. And then I let that intention inspire my painting from there forward. And that's really what's been most critical in my creative process that has kept me going. Because when I focus on, is this good? Does this look good? Does this make people happy? Like frozen, all creative juice is dead, you know?
Absolutely.
So, but when I'm usually, a recent one that I was just working on for someone else was around their child who had been suffering and had been improved, and they were hoping for their wellness and for the wellness of any child that suffered. Mm-hmm. And so when you're moving paint around and you're holding something like, I hope for the, mental health of children, like it's just very grounding and very, it just keeps me moving in a way that focusing on, does this look good? Just, I don't really want to.
Yeah, it's so
I don't know. I feel like that was a roundabout way, but
no, that answers it. And tell me about your book. I'm so excited to get to read it.
And also also for my RC car, I need suspension.
It details my story. I call it radioactive painting because I took a radioactive treatment. So that's why I had to be in isolation, was not to expose other people to radioactivity.
Yeah.
And so I wrote about the experience. I wrote about the lessons, what broke open for me, and then really about like things of this conversation about the creative process and how to kind of playing on radioactive, like this connection, this radio connection, like how to create from a space that's inspired. And
Proud of you. I mean, I don't have any, but I'm so proud of you for for writing it and for all the work that you've put into your artwork. That's so wonderful to see. It's wonderful even just to be able to be the outside observer.
absolutely. Well, I love that you're doing this to help people. I feel like we have, for whatever reason, creativity has been for a special group of people
Yeah.
rather than something that we all feeds our spirit and soul. And I'll just give you this analogy. I always use this analogy of around exercise, that we all recognize that exercise is important for your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Few of us are competing in the Winter Olympics next week, very few of us. But we don't say, well, I'm not gonna blank because I'm not in the Olympics. We would never cut ourselves off from moving our bodies because we don't move them the quickest or most gracefully or whatever. And with creativity, I think it's the same thing, like just because you're not a Van Gogh, but you still get to move this energy of possibility and imagination.
And exactly on this, using the same analogy, the thing that's been feeling true for me right now is that creativity is like, well, you are a creative person, therefore it is easy for you. Like, no, I have literally at this point put like 21 years into developing my knowledge, my ability. I mean, yes, there is a creative drive and maybe some artistic talent in there that different people have different things that they gravitate to. So, but that doesn't mean that everybody that's an artist doesn't actually, just like you would need to exercise, like you wouldn't be as good on day one as you would be 5 years into doing a sport or weightlifting or something like that. It's the same thing for creativity. And I feel like it would be great to be able to give creatives back the ownership of really what they have developed. Like, okay, yes, I think it's nice to say, no, that just came, you just were inspired and you're creative and therefore you can do it. Like, no, it's so much more conscious than all of that. It takes so much more actual like effort and thought than just like, I don't just show up and like it just, I mean, sometimes it feels like it flows out of you, but like the showing up, making yourself show up over and over again, that takes like actual conscious effort and real work.
It's so true. And I'm so grateful for, I've sold hundreds of paintings, I've created hundreds of paintings. Like, I'm so grateful to be at this level of experience and in my art career. And I still will have moments of, who do I think I am? People are going to find out I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't have proper training. Like, I have all the head bullies that anyone else would have. And I just don't take them as seriously. I'm just like, yeah, that's how I feel when I just created the biggest piece, 10-foot wide piece. And I'm getting started and I'm thinking, oh, this person's made a mistake choosing me, just all the familiar head bullies. But I don't let them stop me. So I do like to share that with people, because it's not like some people don't have this self-doubt, or I just feel like that's part of the human condition. And it's like, how do you work with it?
So I have a really targeted question then. With putting your things either online or in social media, and with the head bully component, how do you work around like if you put a piece out that you're really excited about and it doesn't get as much response back, not letting that feel like a criticism of the work and allowing you to still, like, I feel like you as the artist really know that painting best. Like, I know when I did something well. I know when there's a good one. And I don't know. Could you speak to that for me?
Totally. I love that you said this because
So actually one thing it influenced is early and out of the gate, I decided to price, I created a formula for pricing my pieces so that it wasn't like, how do I feel about this piece? And then I'm pricing it. It's just like, I price on size, which doesn't work for everyone, but it works for me. And it helps me just be consistent no matter, you know, because you have special ones. And I've 100% had that experience where I'm like, this is the most special piece I've ever created. And like 3 people like it or something. And you're like, interesting. Like, I don't know. And then you'll have a piece that you're like, I'm not sure, but I'm just gonna like put this out in the world and move on. And people are crazy for it. And you're like, okay, you know, like, I don't know. I've not found that there's always a connection between my experience of a piece and other people's experience. And it's sort of like dating or whatever. It's like you only need one match, you know, like you don't need all the people to like you. You want to like find the person. And
The painting, the person that painting belongs to, right?
exactly. And the number of pieces that arrive and the person falls in love with it, when I see it in their home, I'm like, it's as if I created it for their home. You know, it's so I don't try to know too much about what I'm doing, you know, like, I wonder why I'm doing this. This is new. And then it's like, it fits perfectly in their home. And I'm like, I guess I was doing that for them. I don't know. Try not to control it and understand it all. And then, I mean, this is really detailed, but the
Yeah.
algorithms of social media are a real thing. And I like recently I had a piece that I was just madly in love with. I was like, oh, I'm going to be sad to leave this one. And it hardly got any traction on social. And I bumped it with, you know, I paid $10 or something. And then it sold the next day, you know, like people just actually weren't seeing it. So I think you need to, if you're sharing on social, like you need to come in with some education of how this thing works.
Yeah.
And that it's not even showing your material to multiple people. But
That's a really good.
if I needed input, I don't know. I think also I don't share on social needing anything. I don't need anything from anyone. So I will text a friend if I'm like, is this the most beautiful thing you ever saw? And then my friend will be like, you're painting, I'm so proud of you, or whatever. But if I need something, I'm not going to blast it out to the world of strangers to get something. So if I'm stuck on a painting and I like collaborating with friends, I will text them. But anyway, I try not to need anything from social media because I feel like that is a setup for really.
I think that's another really key point, that if you are putting your artwork out to the world for your own validation as an artist, then that's really the wrong place to be coming from it. And I think it's a valuable tool in the way that our world works now of, I could put my work in a gallery, and that is one way that artists choose to work. Or I could also choose to put my work out directly by using a website and social media. And if that is the tool, rather than a tool of validation, a tool of just literally sales, that really changes what you're asking out of it, and it changes the void that you're filling. I think that's a really good point that you have.
Yeah, and I think it's a phenomenal time to be an artist. I mean, maybe 5 years ago were even better. Like the algorithms have gotten more challenging, but like you don't have to have a gallery. I've never displayed work. I've never sold work in a gallery. And I mean, you lose 50% in a gallery. So I can keep my prices more accessible. I think it's an amazing time. It's so much fun and just sharing the joy. And one thing I want to share this about sharing is
Yeah.
there have been moments in my life, whether recovering from illness, dealing with grief, that, you're stuck in bed.
Yes.
And a friend messaged me a picture of a multimedia thing she was working on, and the color and the energy. And it truly infused me with hope that not everyone is in this state I'm in. She's in a different state. And it comforted me to see her creativity. So I do like have that as one layer in my mind, that just like, friends, the world is sometimes bleak, but it's also beautiful. And just to put out there, it can really help people. I'll just text people personally if I know they're going through a hard time, just like whatever I'm working on, just like, hey, things are still blooming, suns are still rising and setting. So letting your art itself be a comfort, and whatever that, I just feel like, we are in hard times in the world, and you can become despondent. And like, if people have the energy to still be creative, something about that is filled with hope. So I love seeing what people are up to, and just letting that be a gift itself without any comment or like needed. Also, so many people, well, when I used to move in the world more, will comment to me about something they've seen online, and they didn't like or comment on it,
Yeah. But they
but
do
it,
in person.
but it made an impact. Yeah.
That's really neat. Something you said sparked something else, and now I'm trying to remember what that was.
So I think another thing that I wanted to ask you about was in being a professional artist, and how do you set yourself up in that you both want to create and you need to create because it's your job. So how do you because it's obligatory, how do you not let the fun and all the good thing, am I making sense? I know I'm not, I'm doing a bad job of asking this question, but when it's your job, how do you still make it fun?
Absolutely. So I've thought a lot about this, and I'm very much, particularly my siblings who are brothers, will have kind of like lean manufacturing type tips for me, like how to be more productive type tips. And I'm like, I'm not in manufacturing, I'm not painting a fence, I'm pouring my heart into this. Like so that's something I have in my mind is, are you manufacturing or are you creating? And
Yeah.
I mean, I have respect for people. If you are manufacturing, like there's a place for that. I mean, we're trying to provide for families. I understand. For me, I have also kept my, I work 20 hours a week. So I paint 20 and I work 20. And for me, that has been, even though especially this last year, I've been like, am I supposed to take the leap and be a full-time artist? Like as if that would make me more legitimate artist or something. But I am, I earn more in my art career than my job. And I like working. I like collaborating with people. I like not having to demand of my art. And that was something Elizabeth Gilbert talked about this in the book Big Magic. Did you ever read that?
No, but I read voraciously, so I always like the tip of a good book.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's a great book. And I read it at a good moment in my career, maybe year 2 or 3. And she said about her writing as her creativity, she said, I promised my creativity that I would provide for it and not expect it to provide for me. And I was so glad I read that when I did, because I want it to be a soulful place. And I still, I mean, all the time I think, am I working too much? I could be painting more. I have these commissions backing up, and but I actually love falling into the studio with a sense of urgency. Like I only have this much time, and like making the most of it. And I feel like if I had 8 hours, I don't know if I could function at this creative level for 8 hours for myself personally.
Yeah.
Of course you're building canvases and you're updating your website and there's things other than pouring in, but that's how I'm holding it currently. It continues to evolve, but I could shift into more productivity, but it's so soul feeding for me. I'm hesitant to change it.
Well, and it's fascinating that you say that, because one of the things that I found that really helps my productivity, and this sounds so funny because it sounds like just the thing you wouldn't want to have, is having a deadline and something I have to do. So like having a blank wall that we need a piece of art for a project that I have to install, that like, because I mean, it gives me parameters to create within. It gives me a timeline that it has to be done in. And I think what that really does is it really I give myself permission in that moment of, no, like, I am going to paint for as many hours as I need, or I am going to stay up late and paint to get it done. And not let myself get frustrated. Like, it will be going up, and so I better just keep working on it. And funnily enough, like, that's enough to get me out of my own way of like that miraculous mix of like deadline plus an actual piece that has to be done or number of walls that have to be filled. Like, I have gotten, and sometimes it's fast and sometimes it's slow. So it's not that. And like, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's probably not. But like, it's really interesting that you have some element of like, you actually, it sounds like you maybe like that your work is focused and that you have time away, because that means that when you're there, you're all in for that time that you're there.
Being open to learning about yourself. We're all really different. I'm a Capricorn. I'm whatever. I'm really productive. You know, I thrive in that, like, not high pressure, but like a little pressure is good for me. But other people are going to be different, you know. But I always caution people against thinking, I think if you have too much time or too little are both problematic thoughts. But like, most people think they don't have time to be creative.
Mhm.
And the thing I find is I would rather, my goal is basically 3 hours a day in the studio. And sometimes it's 1 hour if I have an early meeting or something, but I'd rather do 1 or 2 or 3 hours a day rather than 2 or 3 8-hour days. You know, like,
Yeah.
to me, showing up multiple times is much more impactful.
Yeah.
And you make so much progress in 15 minutes. But if I have 6 or 8 hours, then I'm getting distracted. You feel, I don't know. So I always say small things often is more impactful than big spaces opening up. So if I have 20 minutes, I'll put paint on a canvas, on a palette. But 6 minutes is how long it takes, I've observed, to
Wow.
Wall paint.
Yeah.
So maybe I would waste paint if I
filled a palette for 6 minutes, but it would nourish my spirit. And I can do a lot in 15 minutes. So,
And I'm going to get you one of those good airtight palettes. Have you not been like for gouache paint and things like that?
no.
Oh.
So I'm in this basement. I don't have a sink. So I have
They make like a Tupperware, like individual, like it's a tray with little rectangular cubbies, and then it has like a Tupperware lid. Because I like water, like I like different thicknesses with my acrylics, so I often am adding,
So I have this palette with paper,
Yeah.
then I don't have to wash it.
Okay.
Because I do have committed so much time, I almost never leave paint on a palette. I almost never save it. So I'm know how much paint it takes to do what I'm doing, but I love that. I'll have to look at that. But finding your way, finding what works.
Okay, so I have one more question, and this is still on this idea of putting your artwork out for the world. What do you do with, and how do you handle when you get really unwelcome feedback? And I agree, yes, part of putting it out there is how do we then deal when we get not just negative criticism, but like really truly not helpful.
Wow. Yeah. I am sort of shocked to not think of examples of that,
Good.
but I feel like maybe I still could have a head bully that thinks people are thinking negative things. I don't know. Um, so yeah, I don't know if I can speak to that. I would love to hear examples. Like I know when I go to contemporary art museum at the classic, my son and husband will say things like, I could
I
do
could
that.
do that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's like the classic sentence.
it is.
And I'm always like, why don't you? Like that person is inspired to do that. You could do that, but you're not doing that. Like I'm really curious about them and what inspires them to do in that way. Okay, I am starting to get a few comments. They are starting to come to me.
I love that the I could do that is
Yeah.
that's like the ultimate insult to artwork. I find that hysterical. Like, well, lots of people can paint. How come because somebody else could paint it, that makes it not art? Like, it's really interesting that that's such a universal, like word for word criticism.
I know. I've had some people be like, well, that's a lot of money for that, kind of commenting on the cost. And I think when you know what your time is worth,
Yeah.
like if I was trained as a lawyer, my art would be more expensive.
Yeah.
Because I would have a sense of my hourly rate being whatever, but I work in a nonprofit. So
well,
but,
even funnier on the same, like smaller artwork tends to sell for less per square inch than larger artwork. That doesn't mean that somebody didn't spend a lot of time on a little piece of artwork.
oh yeah.
And like somebody else does something huge, like you could actually spend the same amount of time on this two pieces. And like, yes, there may be more material cost in one, but the fact that literally the scale of how something is priced changes based on how big it is a great point of how that's not really true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's important to understand negativity bias, that we remember negative comments much stronger. I mean, 1 to 100. If you had one negative comment and 100 friendly ones,
one little bit negative.
Even neutrally, what did they mean by that? Yeah. So I think having really awareness of that in your mind, and it's so that you don't fall in a pit, like it's this primal instinct of like, there's a tiger over there, or there's a pit, don't fall in. You want to remember that. You don't need to remember that the trees are beautiful and there's flowers blooming and da da da. So I think having that self-awareness and I don't know, do you have more examples? I'm trying to think of negative comments. I had one someone relayed to me and they were like, this person said, I don't know why everyone's so into Bronwyn's artwork or whatever. And I mean, it does sort of still, I remember them telling me that and I'm like, I don't really need to know. I don't know. I guess I'm so like solid in my process that I'm mostly, I think even super positive comments can be confusing,
Well, I
or
think
people.
I mean, staying focused in creating why you're creating and what you're putting into it, and really both good and bad, blocking that out. And I think that's the wisdom.
Yeah.
But
if you're feeling so vulnerable that if a negative comment's going to derail you, then I think maybe you're not ready to post them, like practice with friends and family. I think that would be a good, or not. I don't even know if family's the right category.
I was going to say, I think it depends on your family.
Practice with friends, practice with a few trusted friends and teach them what you are looking for. I'm looking for encouragement to keep creating.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you things daily. I don't need you to, I don't know, tell them what would be helpful. And I think building up a muscle, the first painting I ever did, I did not share publicly for 6 months. I didn't have a website. I didn't have social. Like I had a show of all the pieces I created in isolation. I had showed them to friends. I invited friends over to look at it. but I think I think you want to develop a muscle. And this shows up, you hear this a lot in writing,
Yeah.
is like, first just write for the joy, express the thing. Don't figure out how it will land with other people. Like, so I feel like developing a muscle, and I'm trying to think of, I do know people who are trying to create to earn money, and I don't know, that's a whole different mind frame that I'm not in, but I feel like it's kind of a recipe for difficulty.
Yeah.
But
Well,
maybe people find their way.
It feels different then, right? Whoops. Let's see. Hang on one sec. Hold that thought. It feels, it's as though we can in some way see why people are creating things, even though you can't tell why. And creating it for the purpose, creating artwork for the purpose of a paycheck is just like, no, it doesn't feel good. I mean,
I think it would be really
you can
difficult.
paint because you need a paycheck, but if you're standing there like thinking, I need to be paid, I need to be paid, I need to be paid, what is this worth? Like, that's just not the place to be coming from for artwork.
I mean, there are a lot of stories of artists, things not going well for them in their mental health. So I feel like it's a real thing to talk about, like.
And maybe
pressure.
because they used a lot of like mercury and lead and arsenic to paint before.
There you go. There you go. It is true though. What people talk about, this has to be, that's one of the things I've struggled with, is it's so easy. It's so much flow. I feel like I'm not working hard enough, like,
Yeah.
one comment I get a lot, which I've spent so much time with, is like, how long did that take you?
Isn't that interesting?
And I don't
I
want to
have
tell
no
people.
idea.
I don't want to tell people. First of all, I've been thinking about it for 8 hours before I started. And then like yesterday, I spent 3 hours packaging a painting to ship it. 3 hours of wrestling it with packing tape.
Well,
just,
and there's one painting that just like falls out of you
yes.
and appears, and you're like, I don't know where that came from, and you do it in almost in one session.
Yes.
And then there's another painting that you like, there's ones that I come back to over and over, and they're getting thicker and thicker as I layer more paint. But like, so which one is more valuable? Like, because I didn't spend much time, but you know what? I spent all the years that I've been painting to be able to sit there and do that. And then for whatever reason, have it come together. And then I put a lot more effort into the one that took a lot of hours, but it might not be as good, or, like, it's just so, the amount of time that you spend on it is so not like what an artist thinks about the amount of time. Like, that's just, it's not how it works.
You get that one. You get it. So I that's why I don't like pricing based on materials and hours. Because just what you said, I've had that thought, like the paintings that emerge are actually higher value because I couldn't do it twice.
Yeah.
The ones that you labor over, you could probably keep doing multiple. But when I've had some that arrive in 4 or 6 hours, and you're just like, you're not sitting down, you're not having a drink of water, you are like captivated by this piece. I think they're higher value.
Yeah, because those moments as an artist feel more rare, and they feel more special, even though, and that has nothing to do with the amount of time. It's just, it's all the things come together, and something special happens. That's really neat. Was there anything else that you had been thinking about that you wanted to share? So like, the idea of this is, so many creatives are isolated, and I would love to learn, like, so many things are different all over the world. And I know we all can't travel, but getting this idea of getting to share, like, culturally, how is it different places? How is it different for different people? And your individual process as a way of like coming back together and learn, I just think would be so incredibly valuable. So anything along those lines that you feel like your community of creatives you are one of many, what would be what you would want to have?
Another thought that comes to my mind is just about, you know, seeing yourself as something that's growing and evolving. Like the work I'm doing today, I could not have done 8 years ago. And I love my early pieces because I loved those pieces. And now I'm like, what I find is I'm seeing more. The more I work, the more I see. And I will see an old painting in someone's home and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like right away I can see like how I might change it. So I feel like you're investing in a direction, you know, is this how you want to grow? Like spending more time, not taking it too seriously, knowing that hopefully it's not your best work because you're still alive. So yeah, hopefully your best work is yet to come. And I think just, I hope for people to be as kind as they can imagine with themselves, you know, that they would be with a small child, just like, oh, thank you for showing me this. This is amazing. And by the way, a great question to ask someone, a child or anyone, is not, what is that?
It's tell me about it.
Yes, tell me about that piece.
Yes.
Tell me,
Isn't that such a good, isn't that such a good?
So offer that kindness to yourself, you know, instead of like, is this good enough? Like, what's stirring in me as I'm creating this? You know, I think that's what's most interesting. So I hope people will be kind enough that they will keep at it.
Yeah, and keep asking questions or want to learn more about it. Gosh, well, what you've said is so good, and it brings me back around to feeling like you have this overarching wonderful theme in what you're saying of, you know, the importance of the art is why you're doing it, what you're pouring into it, what that process feeds back to you and hopefully to others. And this idea of, if you are creating in this sphere of it coming from a really good place and doing it for a really good reason, you get this nice feedback loop of doing your art for the art's sake. And that makes it so much easier to, I think, shield yourself a little bit from like, also from the, well, what are they painting? Maybe I should paint like that. Somebody's doing it this way. Maybe I should try that. Like, you can just, if you want to learn something new, learn something new. If you want to paint in a different way, paint in a different way, but don't do it because other people are doing something different, or you see that what they're doing. Like, let yourself be more in that safe space to like explore what you want to explore away from all of that.
I love it. And just that all these will fall away, you know, like there's wildfires, there's floods, like the art will not always be here, but we will, and who it has shaped us to be will be here. So I mean, that's the thing that you want to invest in.
Yeah.
Is who you're becoming.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much. This was so great. And it's so nice to get to talk to you.
I know.
And find out that so many of these thoughts that I have randomly on walks by myself, that I'm not the only one that's circling the same things. And thank you for sharing your experience and wisdom. And I'm so excited for your book.
So good. Thank you. Thank you.
You'll have to read a book on tape version of it too, in all your free time.
That would be fancy. Yes. For the artists to listen to while they're working.
While they're painting. Yes, yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
I love it.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
Thanks.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay.
Text me when you need to.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bronwyn, thanks for sharing your lovely work and even more lovely self with all of us. I am so excited to get to share it with other people. Happy painting.